My Religious Faith as a Believer in Past Lives and Reincarnation by Alan Lee Whiteman, October 2025. The following text video is an explanation of my belief system that I have continuously held since 1977, being 48 years in 2025. Of course, some aspects of my faith have undergone slight adjustments as I become aware of updated content and ideas about creation. I was an on and off member of the First Spiritualist Church of San Diego for my entire 30-year tour of duty while living in Southern California. I also sang in the choir of the First United Methodist Church in the San Diego, Mission Valley area just west of Texas Street. I also sang in many of the choir's yearly productions, with Handel's Messiah and the Bach B minor Mass being my favorites. In the past 9 years, I have been watching various YouTube videos by other content creators like Ryan Reeves, Philip Home of the Let's Talk Religion channel, and Joshua Lindsay of the Ready to Harvest channel. I find these people to be very knowledgeable and for the most part unbiased in their descriptions of past religious practices and major events. Do enjoy, like, share, and subscribe to my various YouTube channels. What does Alan Lee Whiteman believe in terms of religion? Subtext: Am I spiritualists? Nominally yes, with caveats. I am feeling a bit guilty about not making this more prominent in my writings, particularly on the social media platforms like Facebook and YouTube. I am a follower, to a degree, of Evolutionary Astrology and the conservative Swedenborg Church. Basically, past lives and reincarnation are real for me, as they are for many others, but with a different twist, as I tend to reject the Indian religion's addressing of dharma or karma. Evolutionary astrology posits the following, assuming no recent changes. All souls are immortal, all created by Source, with two initial conflicting sets of desires. A. Desires at the soul level to separate from Source, and B. Desires at the soul level to return to Source, for reunification maybe. The only way to discharge the separating desires is to incarnate in the physical, becoming disappointed in all respects for being in the physical and consequently to let go of all need or desires to ever reincarnate again, a real biggie. Having discharged, eliminated, burn off, all separating desires, then all that is left in the soul are desires to return to Source. See my quibbles below. Swedenborg religion. Eternal life, immortality, of the soul is tied to free will, like two sides of the same coin. One cannot exist without the other. Free will at the soul level does not necessarily transfer to incarnations, that is, people, including aliens, do not necessarily have free will, though there can be attempts to express it. Spiritualist Churches. Souls always and only reside in the astral space. Returning incarnation personalities after physical death of the body also reside in the same astral space and may go to school for a while there, or be fully reabsorbed by their soul. Souls cannot be sold to the devil by any incarnation, a fallacy of superstition. Incarnations can communicate with astral entities, a variation on remote viewing. Quibbles. To a degree, I am a heretic to the above sources, though I see this as a case of doctrinal issues and not differences in basic issues of faith. Conversion to my faith. For all of my life up through age 30, I was largely a comfortable agnostic, finding more connection with the works of Carlos Castaneda, particularly his books on a Yaqui way of knowledge and a separate reality. My actual conversion to my current faith came at my first private psychic reading in mid-1977 with the then Reverend Georgia Brown, past pastor of the First Christian Spiritualist Church in National City, California. Attending that reading was the residual personality spirit of my father's deceased younger sister Edith Mae Whiteman. Edith had finally succeeded on her third try at committing suicide 9 years earlier in 1969, and she provided the spelling of her name to Reverend Brown, who repeated that name back to me during the reading. At that instant in time, I pivoted away from comfortable agnosticism to spiritualism, as Reverend Brown had no way of otherwise knowing her name. All good engineers accept awareness of limited explanation of reality when presented with suitable evidence, and that happened to me. Reincarnation in the Spiritualist Church sense. The soul creates incarnations to experience the physical with deliberate intent and reaps or degrades itself as a consequence of what happens with each and every new incarnation. Reincarnation and Dharma of Hinduism and Buddhism are actions in any given incarnation do not force or entail a specific consequence of Dharma in a next incarnation or any following incarnation. That is always up to the soul to decide and act upon, as all incarnations are only for the benefit or loss of the soul. Christianity rejects my system of faith. Christianity and the like reject the idea of reincarnation, which is central to my faith as it threatens the basic foundations of their faith. Though see below my distant past life story of being stoned to death as a herald of the coming of Christ as the Jewish Messiah. Predestination. No such real thing, except as an incarnating entity plans ahead for a specific list of events and situations to arise in the course of life as part of fulfilling the purposes of the incarnation. Plans ahead can include such things as being assaulted, having a failed marriage or sequence of success or failure marriages, being subject to difficulties in life, war, persecution, loss, undesired poverty, even riches. The vast bulk of events in personal life, particularly as they connect with personal relationships, are all planned events, there being no coincidences of relationship. Heaven and hell, including purgatory, I reject the nominal Christian concepts for all three areas. My having a belief that the universe is quite capable of creating whatever number of instances and kinds that satisfies the thoughts and desires of a returning personality to the astral space. I am particularly fond of the imagery and visual descriptions presented in the 1998 film of What Dreams May Come, starring Robin Williams. The imagery in the latter part of the film of the path to and arrival at his deceased wife's personal hell are most striking. Note that portions of the film imagery are lifted directly from corresponding described scenes in Dante's Inferno. The film has the wife self-ensconced in her own personal conceptual hell, without any others, in a decrepit recreation of their house, with all the accoutrements of creaking sounds and frightening imagery. Remote viewing and writing. Both are real, with the writing part effective at any distance. Sorry, I have no ability to explain away the obvious contradictions on this subject without a faster-than-light concerns and projections of cosmology or subatomic particle physics. Yes, I understand there is a limit to the speed of light, but I posit that consciousness involved in doing remote viewing is massless and therefore not subject to the limitations of nothing can be accelerated to go faster than the speed of light. Some aspect of remote viewing are also not bound by time. Psychic readers make use of a common brain sublayer of functionality also used by remote viewing. Evil and malevolent entities, both exist. There are many residual personalities, meaning the spirits of some deceased, that do not desire return to their soul, but instead seek continued experiencing of sensation in the physical. They can work individually or alone in seeking to reside in an accepting physical body, being human or otherwise, for any length of time. For more information on the subject, see search engine results for the subjects of the Gerasene demoniac, the story of King Saul, the slave girl with a spirit of divination, and the woman with the spirit of infirmity. Know thyself. I support and encourage this in my other writings. For me being Gemini with Leo rising, 12th house Pluto, INTJ in temperament, and Enneagram Type 4 are as much a religion issue as having past lives and reincarnation as being real. Commentaries on the purpose of reincarnation in the physical. One might successfully argue that from most perspectives, this issue is the core of my faith, but that would be a mistake. Astrology and suspicions about the soul's eventual residency are part of my personal religion. I have never been comfortable with the Big Bang Theory, believing more in continuous creation and possible cycles of Big Bang crunch than repeat. The initial set of soul creation desires about separating from Source are all about elimination of the desires or need to incarnate. The major desire to incarnate is to experience being in the physical, to work on stuff, take tests on things supposedly learned, and to eventually get to the point of realizing, what I thought I wanted in life is really meaningless and devoid of value. That is, the experiencing goal is I am disappointed in what I just got, and I realize that all my efforts to get something are of little value, except as the realization helps burn off a bit of desire to incarnate. This process may have to be repeated seemingly endlessly in subsequent incarnations. So, what are examples of desired things? Think on status, fame, fortune, trophies, spouse or spouses, physical stuff like houses, cars, toys, job or position, authority, generally anything of vanity. Other things like lust, possession, power over others, considerations of importance, hate, envy, belong in the list. So, a good marker for spiritual advancement is the realization of disappointment. One can argue that the true life workers are the ones who constantly seek stuff only to be disappointed in the end. Those people are making more real progress than those who profess or seek spirituality in life. While this is part of the eventual return to Source, not all of the entities in the astral have any kind of a desire to return to Source. All they want is to experience sensation felt by those in the physical who allow such vampiric entities to participate in feeling sensation. This experiencing desire does not include reincarnating. One can argue that such lost entities, meaning not souls, are descents into evil, and that most likely their originating souls are also likely, though not necessarily, self-restricted from returning to Source. What happens after separating desires are eliminated? Subtext 1. What does reunification with Source mean? Subtext 2. I have a very long way to go in eliminating all physical desires. The following is all speculation on my part. Having never gotten to the point of returning to Source, I can only speculate on what that means, picking only one choice. Complete loss of identity, full reincorporation with Source. Partial loss of identity, incorporation, but with a place in the hierarchy. Becoming Source of a New Universe, an SF idea by James Blish. Completer loss of identity. This is a bit scary, even to me. Essentially, it means that all returned incarnations of a soul go poof or are fully absorbed by the soul with loss of identity, and that souls themselves, if consciousness is an aspect of soul existence, also lose their concept of individual identity. Essentially, death for the soul, meaning no more immortality in the astral or subsequent incarnations. B. Partial loss of identity. This is a bit less scary, but it essentially says that souls become something like super angels participating with Source in a vast administrative state over all other souls and their incarnations while the vast period of return to Source work continues to take place. C. Becoming a new Source. This is a proposal concept in the last chapters of the Cities in Flight trilogy by Alfred Bessler, a science fiction writer of modest fame. Bessler was not a fan of evolutionary astrology. Well, he never wrote on the subject, but his proposal idea is that at some point in time an advanced person becomes Source of their own private universe, without any help or guidance from what I recognize as the source of all creation. This is a very daunting and scary idea. For all that I know, reunification with Source might have this new universe step as a consequence of reunification. My story of being a herald for the coming of Christ as the Jewish Messiah. Subtext: I was a pre-Christian, one of the first of my kind. I had a particular incarnation, not in Bethlehem, just prior to the birth of Jesus Christ, the Jewish Messiah, where I announced to the people of my then Jewish village that Christ the Messiah was arriving and would bring salvation to all Jewish people. Note that I do not indicate Christian anywhere in this description. The village elders took my spoken words as blasphemy and had me stoned to death by some, but not all, of the villagers. I was a young man then with a wife and children, and my faith at the time resulted in their losing a husband and father for me then being outspoken. I can still see in my mind memory the image of my then wife with lower legs flat on the ground, bent over my dead, bleeding and broken body, with her hands over her face, rocking back and forth and crying for my death and her loss. I was not at that time anywhere in league or stature with John the Baptist, though I did speak out knowing that my doing so would likely result in my early death. Given that the Jewish community rejected Christ as the Messiah Savior, I can safely say that I was then, in that life, an early Christian and that I died for my faith. I have no desire to ever repeat that experience again. Thanks for watching, Ellen.